Would you like more balance and peace of mind, but you're often feeling depleted and drained at the end of every week? Then keep listening, because today you're going to learn 3 steps for setting boundaries at work. And this actually came in as an inquiry from a professional woman who wants to feel more energized at the end of every week, but was feeling drained and depleted, and asked me if I would help her learn to set boundaries. And this is really important because if you don't consciously set boundaries, you can end up feeling stressed, overwhelmed, overcommitted, and depleted. So how do you set boundaries at work? Well, first, let's start with defining what exactly a boundary is. A boundary sets the limits of an area. And let's use a really concrete example. A couple of weeks ago, I traveled from the United States into Canada because my mother lives in Ontario. And I went by way of New York State, and right at the border security between the United States and Canada is the boundary between, where Canadians live by Canadian law and Americans, or where we live in the United States by American law. So similarly, a boundary in your personal life sets those limits for you. But personal boundaries are often invisible. And so how then do you go about setting those for yourself? I like the definition from Brené Brown. Brené Brown says a boundary is what's okay and what's not okay. So here are 3 steps for setting boundaries at work. Number 1 is be really clear about your long-term and your short-term goals. And by short-term, I mean getting as granular as daily and weekly. And if you work in a corporate environment, these should obviously be aligned with your corporation's goals. And this is important because when you are clear and in alignment with your goals, it's going to help you to know what those boundaries need to be in order for you to have your greatest success. So step number 2 is to check in with yourself what's okay and what's not okay. I remember reading some years ago, I believe it was in Fortune magazine, about Bill Gross, who was an investment professional. And every day he would leave his desk at exactly the same time for 90 minutes to go do yoga and work out. And during this time, he had some of his best ideas. It was not okay to interrupt him. And in fact, he mentioned that in 30 years, he had only been interrupted 2 or 3 times because of emergencies. So get clear for yourself what's okay and what's not okay in order for you to function at your best. And step number 3 is to set and review your boundaries. Once you're clear about what's okay and what's not okay for you, do that introspection about what your boundaries need to be. Write them out and then actually review them regularly. Because here's what happens. In a moment of weakness, you could agree to something that's not okay and then later regret it or resent it. So it's really important. All 3 steps, but also step number 3 is to regularly review your boundaries. So what about you? What has this message today caused you to reflect about your boundaries? I'd love to hear in the comments below. I'm Stephanie Hessler.